My name is Gaurav. For some of you, if you just were in the Purview overview session, we are back talking about the updates and roadmap on what we are working with Purview data governance. So the way I want to organize this particular session is essentially around what work we've been doing in the platform, and then the different applications that you see me talking about as well. Now, as I mentioned, it's a platform-based approach where we want to maximize the information that we want to capture in this data map, the knowledge graph that we are building. Now, if you're here to learn about what is this platform-based approach, I will not go into that. We already covered that in the previous session. I'll just focus on what are some of the things that we are doing in the platform in terms of making it more extensible, in terms of extending it to make it easier for you to populate the data map. And then we'll talk about specific things that we are doing in the different applications. Now, in different applications, you will see that I do have certain timelines in certain cases for things that are farther along that we can already project. But please do always remember that as we work to develop it and as we work to deploy, there's a bunch of things go into that. So please don't treat those as things set in stone. They can move around here and there. The intent is to showcase that those things are actively being worked upon, and we are working to deliver them as soon as possible, right? So with that, I'll start with the platform. And I also want to let you know, I want to keep this session a lot interactive. So if you have questions in between, please feel free to raise hand and stop. The goal is this, to essentially answer your questions as you guys have been implementing the Purview solution for your customers. I'm sure you have a bunch of things that you want to ask, so please do raise hands in between. I'll be happy to stop and kind of answer those questions along the way as well. And I'll monitor the screen as well if something pops up. Now, with Purview platform, as I mentioned in the last session, it's a platform-based approach. So the way to think about that is we have embraced the hybrid nature of your data estate, which means everything in the Microsoft cloud, also in third-party systems, whether it is AWS, Google, your SAP instances, your Salesforce instances, Teradata, Snowflake. As I mentioned, we just announced Databricks integration as well. All of that is embraced from get-go. And we'll talk about a couple of things in terms of the platform. The first is how we are adding more sources in terms of populating the data map. So as I mentioned, we have 56 sources that are in public preview or GA, and there are 4 new that are currently in private preview, and we are working with a select set of customers to get feedback before we launch them in public. So I'll talk about those 4. Then I'll talk about this whole effort that we are doing to make it easier to populate the map, which is the always attach motion, which kind of ties with the Purview tenantization model that we are working towards. And then finally, as I mentioned, the attach motions that we are doing with respect to the Microsoft Cloud to make it easier for you guys. So we'll go into these 3. I'll start with the first one around the data map population. So these are the 4 sources, apart from what you already see in the public documentation, that are in private preview. Very soon you'll see us launching these. In terms of adding more sources in future, we are still working towards determining our roadmap. We plan in 6-month cycles. Our next 6 months, which starts from April and run till end of September, we are still doing the planning. So we will update our roadmap once we have the next set of sources that we will enable. But these are the 4 that are currently in private preview, which includes AWS Redshift, Tableau, Dataverse, where both your tech metadata capture as well as classification would land. And then finally, the Databricks Unity Catalog. The Databricks HMS-based integration is already in public preview. So if you have a customer who's using the HMS Hive Metastore-based route, that's already in public preview. The Unity Catalog with tech metadata capture is in private preview. And here we'll be adding other dimensions around lineage capture, which Databricks has exposed APIs. Now we are doing the work to essentially add that lineage capture into our data map. And you'll see that us adding those capabilities iteratively as well in this connector. So Again, the point being continuously keep adding more sources so that we can map more and more of your data state. So next, I want to talk about the whole tenantization model that we are working towards. So I want to lay the picture to just give you what we are working towards. You will intentionally see that I'm not posing any timelines right now for this. As we get closer towards private and public previews, we'll keep the community updated and we'll let you guys know. But the way to think about this is today you kind of provision Purview at a subscription level. And as I mentioned in the previous session is as well, that our guidance to customers is to create a single Purview account so that there is a single data map and centralization of knowledge in your organization. Because if you create multiple Purview accounts, you are creating multiple data maps and you're distributing the knowledge, and the value is in a single Purview account, because at the end of the day, the example that I gave, if you have 1,000 Synapse workspaces and if all of them are hooked to a single Purview account which is scanning your data estate, then from your customer perspective, they're able to search across their data estate, right? And imagine if you had multiple Purview accounts, then which one will you link to your Synapse workspace? You will always be in that dilemma. So in order to essentially avoid all of those problems, right, where we do not know which one is your default account, we do not know essentially how to capture the metadata, we are working towards taking Purview to a tenant level initialization. Now, there is going to be motions around analytics attach with your Microsoft Information Protection tenants, where if you had one, we want Purview to be automatically provisioned at a tenant level so that you don't have to go through that whole provisioning process. Not to say that you won't have one if you wanted to if you're not using those stacks and you want to just use Purview from a governance standpoint, you'll be able to do that. So we are working to take that at a tenant level and also working towards enabling auto provisioning scenarios at a tenant level depending on the attached motions, and you'll be able to provision yourself as well. Then today, as Blesson showed in the last session, you have to do manual scanning, which means that you have to come register the source and you essentially have to set up scans. Now, as we work with our customers, the biggest problem today they face is that they actually do not know what assets they have in their organization, which means that they do not know what are the SQL instances, what are the storage accounts, Cosmos DB collections that they have in their whole environment. Now, in order to find the person who knows all about it is pretty much a very hard job, not to say impossible. And then if you found those instances as well, knowing the person who has the username, password, or some authentication mechanism to connect to it so that you can map it and kind of populate the data map is another set of layer in the organization. But if you think about it from a Microsoft perspective, because all of these services are running in that singular customer tenant, we as Microsoft know what exact storage accounts, what exact SQL DBs, what exact Kusto instances you have, and we can automatically attach those to your Purview account, right? And that is what we are working towards, where we want to take this manual registration process away, and we want to automatically attach based on service to service trust. And there is a set of, as you would imagine, it's not going to be enabled for your entire Microsoft cloud on get-go. So we are working towards a set of motions to attach with the analytics instance, the database platform systems, and then with M365 as well. So as of today, the data map has no knowledge about M365 objects. We do not have a source to Excel, SharePoint, and this is something that we want to evolve the data map to have the knowledge about those systems as well. And we want to do it in an automatic fashion, knowing that there is a singular M365 tenant for the customer, and how can we attach to it and make those assets in the M365 data estate, whether it is OneDrive, SharePoint, all of those available for your data engineers, basically your data consumers to consume via browse and search capabilities in the Purview data catalog. So we want to get rid of the manual processes and move towards what we call as an always attach strategy. And as you would think that this will only work for the Microsoft cloud, right? Because we have no visibility into third-party systems like AWS systems or your on-prem systems. For that, the scanning model is not going away. And even for the first-party systems, if you come in and say, I want to still do the scan to my, let's say, the storage account, it will still be available, which means that this whole always attach motion will be backed by a full consent model. And the consent model would be hierarchical, because you could say that there is a set of instances, let's say SQL instances I have in my organization for which I do not want the information to be captured in the map. So again, it will be hierarchical, meaning at a resource group level, at a subscription level, you will be able to control whether that metadata should be pushed or not, right? So that's the direction that we are moving towards. And then, as I mentioned, there won't be any scanning. We want to have automatic. And today, the provisioning is in Azure per subscription, and we want to have one per tenant. It will still be fully built on Azure. The utilization will be built via Azure, but that would be more of things that customers will have to do in terms of how the billing would work with tags and all, right? But the infrastructure behind the scenes is still Azure, so it's not changing. So if you think from a customer perspective, things are getting better. You have account at a subscription level. Once we are on this journey and we launch, we want that account to be automatically upgraded. And I intentionally use the word upgrade and not migrate, because it will be an automatic upgrade. Customers don't have to invest in migrations and all of it. We will automatically do it for them. And today, when we even look at our telemetry, most of the customers, based on our guidance, only have a single Purview account in a subscription. So if you think about it, it's a straight upgrade for them to the tenantized model. So that's what we are working towards. Again, coming back and saying that nothing from your perspective changes in the sense that what you are doing, should you stop doing it? No, just keep doing it. The things would get better, and you'll be able to essentially reap the benefits of this always attached strategy that we are working towards, instead of identifying those sources in the Microsoft cloud, kind of attaching to it. Please.
What will be the effect on the collections if you do always attached? Because now if you attach a source, you cannot change it from the collection. So if it's automatically attached, then you need to do something with the collections.
Yes. So that's actually a good segue into what is the model that we are working towards, and I'll answer that question as I describe this model, right? So think of it that we have one Purview account per tenant, and you'll have it pinned to a home region, and you'll still have the data map provision, which is the knowledge graph containing all your assets and the relationships across the data estate. Think of it that we'll have a system metadata, which is what the collections and the roles that you define today, and then reference metadata, which is any type of annotation, whether it is glossary, meta model that we just launched, or labeling. And then there will be a set of environments. And think of environments as just a way of geo-pinning your metadata. Nothing else, right? If you want to do CI/CD, if you want to do dev test prod scenarios, the answer is multiple tenants, just like you do it in the M365 world, just like you do it in the Power BI world today. The environment notion is for making sure, like we have a customer whose metadata has to stay in the Poland region, and it cannot cross that. So they'll be able to essentially create an environment for that and be able to geopin that metadata in that region. Now, to answer your question, because we'll move in this always attached motion, and we'll be automatically capturing the metadata, by default, there's a set of hierarchy that we'll come up with, and that hierarchy you can think of as is straightforward based on the cloud. Like for all the M365 stuff will go in the M365 hierarchy. All the Azure one will go in the Azure hierarchy. And all the systems that we keep on attaching will go. But it will be backed by a rule-based engine. So there will be a default rule to say everything in Azure go in the Azure hierarchy, but that rule will be configurable for you to change and say that if my thing is like, it's a rule engine, right? So it will start with basic logic. initially, but ultimately it's a full rule engine that we are working to enable that you'll be able to essentially change and kind of assign which sources go in what in future. Okay. Great. So these environments, as I mentioned, are grouping of non-overlapping data assets by geography. That's what we are working to essentially enable for you guys. So as I mentioned, what this means is from an attached perspective, we want to kind of move towards an always governed proposition. Again, as I explained in my overview session, most of our customers, no, I shouldn't say most, every customer that we work with wants to move towards this always governed strategy. We are starting from the raw data across their entire life cycle of data. They want to have their data always governed. So the Microsoft Intelligent Data Platform that was announced at Build last year, so all of that, which is the analytics and the operational DB and the M365, we want to move towards an always governed strategy. What does it mean? There would be one Purview instance per tenant automatically attached to your M365, your analytics BI instances and operational DBs. And then ultimately, once this is there, the whole enforcement piece that we talked about in the last session with the policy ecosystem, you'll be able to do that in an automated fashion by defining those different types of policies as well. And the other thing is, like today, again, if you are in the M365 ecosystem and you use this compliance center or the compliance portal, which is about only M365 assets, there's a bunch of apps that exist in compliance center. With this whole strategy, those apps will also be available along with the current data governance apps. It's going to be a journey in the sense that those apps will start with only the Microsoft, like the M365 data assets, and then eventually we want to make those apps available in multi-cloud as well. But it will be a journey before we do that. So that's the platform piece. Now, going into the catalog pieces. So there's a bunch of investment that we are doing in catalog. And if I were to categorize those, so there are investments around improving the browse and search capabilities. There are investments in documentation and collaboration. And that's one of the biggest feedback that we have gotten from customers, that how do you, today you can scan the physical systems and capture the metadata in those physical systems, but how can you enable a wiki-like experience for me where I can just dump anything? At the end of the day, it's a catalog, right? So I want to do that. Or how can you make collaboration easier, that I have found a data asset and I want to just interact with the owner just by staying in the catalog application and not leaving that. So those are some of the things that we are doing. So if I were to go into those and start with browse and search, there's a lot of work that we are doing in relevance. And this is something that, if you think about it from your perspective, if let's say you search customer, right? So if I go back to the application and kind of showcase that to you, when you go to the stuff and let's say you search sales at this point, now there could be 10,000 copies of sales in the system, and that's the trick, right? How do you return relevant results? So there's a lot of techniques that we apply before returning these results. A very simple example of that is, if I'm an owner of a particular asset, that will be ranked higher as compared to others. But now if you think about it, these are the set of rules that we have defined, and based on that, we are ranking the results and returning these results to you. But what we have learned working with organizations is that they want to customize the results in the order that they want those to be returned. So we are actually working to expose these relevance APIs in private preview, which is what this was talking about, that we'll start with APIs, and then based on, it's a process in terms of customizing these results and customizing those APIs, fine-tuning the results. So we'll start with those APIs. There's a bunch of customers who are working to try these APIs, give us feedback. Based on that, we will tune the algorithms behind the scenes, and ultimately we'll make it available through the user experience as well. But for now, the API route would be the first one that we are working to launch, which will allow you to have customizable relevance and return the results based on the order that you would like. So a bunch of rules that you'll be able to define using this. Then a lot of work, again, in browse and search, where today, one of the things that we keep on hearing from customers is that there is a repeated search that I keep on doing, right? And ultimately, every time I have to come, type the keyword or start from the search page and then go down and kind of return those results. So how can I save my search, right? And then next time when I come in, I just click in to see that and see if any results have changed, if it is the same time, but I don't have to go through that process again and again. Similarly, today, if you look at our search filter, right, and this is something that I intentionally kind of feel that something of we have made this as a long list of filters, which is not business user friendly, because it's not intuitive to realize that which one should I click it to get to my results. Because the key with the browse and search, if you think about what catalog is doing, catalog is enabling you to browse and search information from the map. For any organization, we call these S500 customers, and there are different categories. They have millions and millions of assets. So imagine them coming here, and if there's a single Purview account implemented for all of them, and starting to search across those millions of assets. If you do not know the intent, obviously the whole LLM, the ChatGPT thing that you are seeing, obviously at some point you can imagine that we are working to integrate all of that into this as well. But still, returning those relevant results is tricky. So what we are working to do is kind of revise this page to make it a lot business user friendly. There's a lot of research that we have done in the last semester around thinking that should it be one app, should it be two apps in terms of consumption and curation and stewardship? Should it be persona-based, where you come in and first tag your user to say, yeah, this user is a data engineer versus this is a data curator, and based on that, we can customize the page. So we got some good results, and then now we are working to invest in terms of how to make this interface more business user-friendly. So that's the work that we are doing. Then, as I mentioned, right, search engine with natural language processing, which is the whole thing where you just want to type your intent, not keywords and not the actual physical asset name, and we can understand that intent and kind of translate that with the ChatGPT craze that you are seeing. So a lot of work is being done around that. And then things like spell check, synonyms, phonetics, and the other thing that we have actually done in this semester, that is an execution and ending by end of March, is to improve the performance of browse user experience. So we realized working with customers, again, as we go to millions and millions of assets of scale, that there were certain performance issues. So we have actually fixed that, and this is already released for our customers to be able to browse. So it doesn't matter if you have millions of assets, you'll still be able to browse it in a hierarchical manner, both for your structured data as well as unstructured data. Then, as I mentioned, a lot of work is being done in data collaboration. So one of the feedback that we got from our customers, and a lot of customers, is essentially how can they rate their assets? So we are working to deploy this in production. This is a test environment, and hence I'm able to code the date where you'll be able to rate your assets, and then you'll be able to see that what other people have rated and kind of provided comments, if any. And this is a great way because, again, at the end of the day, when you are searching for an asset as a data consumer, you want to make sure that you are starting with the right asset in order to do your data science process or a data analytics process. And all of these things with ratings gives you confidence to say, yes, this is the right asset to use, because, again, in an organization of humongous scale, finding the person who owns this is very hard. Now, obviously, we have this contacts thing, which is the next thing in collaboration that we are working. So here, there is no expert and owner assigned, and that's where ratings could help. But again, the next level is if there is an expert and owner assigned, and somehow you're not able to get through the ratings that is this the right one or not, and you want to interact with that person, we are working to enable Teams integration right in here so that you can start to interact with those people without leaving the catalog application. So again, from a productivity improvement perspective, that's huge, because now you can come in and kind of use that feature to start interacting with those folks and essentially not leave the application. So that's what is happening on the data collaboration side. And then similarly on data stewardship, where in terms of curation, today we do support bulk edits, but again, it is limited to only 25 assets in a single go. And feedback from customers is it has to be beyond 25, and that totally makes sense. So we are working on that. Bulk editing of column information. So the way to think about this, a bunch of bulk edit across different dimensions in your catalog. That's what we are working towards. Ability to import and export from the catalog using a CSV. As I mentioned, an articles-based experience. So today, one of the things our pure play providers, competitors that do best is they have this wiki-style thing where you can dump any information. And this is one of the biggest asks from our customers, that today we map the physical systems, but if I just want to dump anything like you can do on Wikipedia, I cannot. And you could do it through the API, because at the end of the day, we use Apache Atlas, so you can create a custom type and use the API to push the information. But again, that requires knowledge to use the APIs, to write those APIs, to call the systems. And if I'm a business user, I don't have that knowledge. So from a business user perspective, they want this experience, and that's what we are working to enable here. And then a bunch of experiences around rich text editing. So we launched this rich text editor for description. It is there for your business glossary experiences as well. And now we are continuing to enhance it with more and more things with respect to how you can embed a video, how you can attach a file. So all of these kind of allow you to move towards a more Wikipedia-style stuff where you can essentially dump anything or everything in the catalog if you want. And then the final thing here is with respect to any free tag. So today we have this thing called classification, which is system classification and custom classification. And system classification is these 200 plus classifiers that we support out of the box across different domains like personal, government, security. And custom classification is where you can kind of come and define any key value pair. But that's still not going to the catalog asset and saying, oh, I want to assign this particular tag called free, right? Let's just say you want to assign. You can't do that. You first have to define a custom classification, then come to the catalog and do it. But a lot of users just want to assign some random tag, random free tag in their organization that they want to use. And ultimately, they want to use the APIs to be able to say, return me all the assets that are tagged, free. Right. So that will tags would enable them, free text tags will enable them to do that. Now the underneath system, which is the Apache Atlas meta model, already supports that, and we are working to enable the user experience for that for customers. Then business workflows. So as, again, last session, Blesson showed that how you can enable a self-service access workflow. Now, we have different types of workflow in the system, and think of these as out-of-the-box templates, which are fully customizable. So we showed you the self-service access workflow. We also have a business CRUD workflow. So anytime anyone can create a business term, it can trigger a workflow for the owner to approve before the business term takes effect. And the other type that we heard a lot from customers is around asset curation. So when we scan the physical system, there's a set of metadata we capture. With our support with managed attributes, you can now add a custom attribute to the asset as well. And let's say if anyone in your organization, so 90% plus of your organization would just be readers on the catalog, on the data map, and they will consume the information through the catalog. They will have no other rights to do anything. So if they come in and they want to essentially submit an update, let's say they want to change a description. Now anyone can do that, and you can tie it to asset curation workflow. Again, behind the scenes, it triggers the workflow, sends an email to the owner to approve or deny, and based on that, the change will take effect or will not take effect. So these workflows are fully customizable, as we showed in the last as well, and as you can see in the screenshot as well. We have embedded the Logic Apps workflow in Purview. So if I were to show you this one over here, right? So if I go in the Management Center, and once it loads, and if I go in authoring, you will see that I have this asset curation workflow, which is out-of-the-box template, but you can add a new step. You can fully customize it to your needs and kind of do anything over here to do this asset curation workflow and make it fully customizable. So this is what we have launched, and then we are working towards adding more capabilities in workflow with managed attributes, with the manual lineage support that we recently added, where now you can kind of add a lineage arc in Purview, in the user experience, not only the automated lineage that we capture, but you can edit that and add your own step inside that lineage arc as well. So how you can tie it to an approval workflow is something that we are also working towards. And then finally, in catalog, think of this as an automation capability that we are supporting at a platform layer. So today you can create a business glossary, you'll have business terms, but you have to manually apply those business terms. Now again, with the organizations of scale with millions and millions of assets, that's kind of an impossible task. You can use our APIs to do things, but it's, again, requires a lot of work at the API layer, and that's what this business rule capability will allow you to do. Here also the route is we're going to first enable with the API and then kind of enable the user experience, and that's what we are working towards. It is the first scenario is targeted towards automated application of business terms onto assets in the map, and then ultimately we are building a rule engine which can be will enable different types of rules from an automation perspective for you guys. So any questions on the catalog part or the tenantization? Great question. So the question is that if you do workflows, or for that matter, any assets in the catalog as well, you want to be able to support versioning, and how would we do that? So with versioning, there's actually a precursor. First, we need to support auditing capabilities so that you're able to see who did what. So if someone changed, whether it was an automated process or a manual intervention, you should be able to track that. So you should be able to do auditing of that. And then if you see that who changed what, if there's a change you want to undo, you should be able to go to a previous version. Whether it is about creating these workflows, whether it is about physical assets that we captured in the map, or for any operation. So auditing is something that we are working towards, and that is something that's going to come in stages where we'll enable the system changes first and then user actions, and that will essentially allow us to do the versioning stuff. But versioning is something that we are not working to unlock in the next 6 months. It's something that we will do after that, at least at this point in time, from what we know with our planning exercise. But if something changes, we'll definitely keep you guys updated. There are ways you could do that, because at the end of the day, you could store that information. We have this whole, with Apache Atlas integration, we have this Kafka endpoint where you can listen to any update that has happened happening in the data map. And if you have that hook attached to the Kafka endpoint, you can kind of say that a change happened, I'm storing this particular, if you have everything mapped and stored in GitHub, a change happened, then you essentially update that to say there is this change that happened, and you capture the new version. So you can do that using the API route today, but obviously it is, you have to do work in order to enable that. So there are ways that customers have enabled that, and the out-of-the-box capability will come in future iterations. So I have a couple of questions in here. In the Purview plus MSFT Cloud image under Analytics AI BI, there's no lake or event hub icon. That was just a representation. It would essentially cover all AI, BI, and analytics system. It's nothing to say that those systems will not be supported. Obviously, as I mentioned, it would be a click-stop approach. Not all the MSFT cloud systems will be mapped in first go. There will be a whole roadmap of those sources that will come. Our North Star goal is to map the entire MSFT cloud, but that's why you didn't see me. I'm just painting the picture of where we are going towards and not giving a roadmap of saying that these are the ones that are going to come first, which one of those. We are still working through those details, and we'll unlock that in future iterations. Does Purview allow the ability to integrate data dictionaries, since this is an essential part of data governance and providing documentation? So yes, with Business Glossary, you can kind of maintain the whole taxonomy, and you can bulk import and export that as well. And you can apply that business context onto physical assets in the map, and then again use our browse and search experiences with Purview Catalog to consume information from that data map. So you'll be able to do that. I hope that was the data dictionary question. I hope that answered that part. Any other question on this? Go ahead.
It's about the data sources, though. When can we expect Azure Purview to work with Google BigQuery in other regions than the US?
In other regions, not the US.
Yes, currently the documentation states that it only can scan BigQuery that is located in the US region.
Okay. I will follow up on that. I don't have the answer right now on that from the top of my head, but I can definitely follow up on when other regions will be available. Great. So with respect to data state insights, the overwhelming feedback from customers is we showed you out-of-the-box reports in the previous session with stewardship dashboard, with essentially asset insights on how your assets distributed, the information we have around labeling, the classification to understand risk profile of the data. But those are static reports, which means whatever KPIs we have enabled is what you see. Now, what we are working towards is enabling in-product customization. So we are integrating with Power BI embedded. So think of all those reports as being Power BI embedded reports, and then you can just customize whatever and do whatever. The underneath data model would be exposed. You can create custom KPIs, edit the out-of-the-box KPIs, totally up to you. So that's the in-product customization that we are working towards. And then we want to add more reports as well. Starting with ownership insights is the one that we are going to do in the next iteration. And in future, we'll add more as well. But that's the one that we are working towards so that you can understand ownership across your data estate. And that's one of the biggest problems that we hear from customers, that there is so much proliferation of data that you actually don't understand where did that data come from and then who's the owner of that data. Now, with the collection hierarchy, we essentially want to solve that ownership problem where you will be able to assign owner at different layers. At the end of the day, collection is a hierarchy. So imagine if you have an asset at the leaf level and it doesn't have an owner defined, we'll keep walking up the chain till we find the owner, because it is required for all these workflow scenarios to send the email. Because at the end of the day, the email that triggers for self-service access or for asset updates goes to the owner. And we will not allow you to create a root collection without an owner defined. So at the end of the day, we can walk all the way up, and let's say CEO is the owner of your root collection. He's going to get an email to approve that, right? So ultimately, the insights report will be able to tell you how is the ownership across your assets in the data state that has been mapped, and you'll be able to drive ownership using that. Definitely, you'll see that in each state will be 10, 20%, and then how can you go to 70, 80, and probably 100% of that. Then with data policy, there's a lot of work we are doing to support additional data sources across OLTP and analytics, and these are some of the 4 that we are working to support. And then, as we showed, that you can request access right from Purview catalog to your sources, right? And when you request access, a lot of times the feedback that we have heard from customers is, how can you limit it, that access that has been granted to only 1 day or 7 days or a month? So we are working to add this tenured self-service capability so that not only the owner can grant access, the owner can also tell that I'm only granting access for 1 hour or 1 week based on the requirements. Then the DevOps policies that we talked about, we are working to support additional data sources with MI and SQL DB, and then with data access management using sensitivity labels. So this is the whole integration with Microsoft Information Protection, which only targets today your Office assets. And we are working to extend that to your SQL columns, to your SQL MI columns. So there's a whole work that we are doing towards extending that Microsoft Information Protection app beyond M365 assets that we are working towards. Finally, with sharing, we have more essentially in-place sharing and lineage for in-place shares. So this is a capability that was recently assigned. Sorry for the header, I forgot to change it. But what we have done is, just last week, we have announced this capability where you can now capture the whole lineage for your in-place sharing. So imagine your storage accounts, you're sharing them inside or outside your organization. Ultimately, the storage account maps to a tenant. So this kind of shows that if you're looking at an Azure Active Directory tenant, Microsoft, you can see all the sharing that has been done at that tenant level inside and outside your organization with this lineage view now. This was a capability that was launched last week. So I'm towards the end. So you saw like across the platform and the different applications, some of the work that we are doing in upcoming iterations. Some of the work is going to land in the next semester. We had certain dates in there. Some of those will be landing incrementally in click stops. Like, for example, the work around tenantization and automatic attach won't get completed in 6 months, right? So there will be multiple iterations. Things will start to land hopefully towards the end of this year, and then we will keep adding more and more sources there and keep buttoning up the story across the entire Microsoft cloud. As I showed in the last meeting as well, there are certain resources that you can use to get started with Purview, kind of engage with the engineering team, give us feedback, request for a particular feature, and we are very closely watching all of this. You should subscribe to the tech community blog. Anytime, almost every other week, we are launching a new capability, so you'll be able to know about that and learn as well. So please feel free to ask any questions if you have at this point. Any questions, comments?
Do you have any TA on the data access governance with the SQL DB that you mentioned on this last slide?
Okay, so the question is, do you have any ETA around SQL data governance, around SQL MI, is what?
SQL on-prem.
SQL on-prem. I'll let Blesson answer that question.
So if you go back to the slide, so we are doing Azure SQL DB at the moment. We are in public preview with that. With Arc SQL, we are enabling it for on-premise. So the private preview would be kicking off next month. Yeah, that is the. This is data DevOps and. This one? Okay, all three are under the data policy or data access. Yes. So this one is more around where you are using sensitivity labels of the tables to do the assignment. For this one, we are looking at private preview before, by around the end of this year is what we are looking at.
So there's a question here, are there any plans to introduce pause capability to better manage the service calls in off-work hours? So at the end of the day, today, with the scan capability that you have, you specify how often you want that scan to run, right? And based on that, you can essentially control the cost in terms of scanning. Now, once the information is in the map, there's a holding cost of the map, right? That will continue to exist, and that depends on how small or big your map is. Whether we are working to optimize that, absolutely yes, we are working towards optimization. We, in fact, did a bunch of work, if you look at the Data Estate Insights application or even the data map in the last semester, to kind of reduce the cost from a customer perspective. And there's a whole article that we published as well on how we brought down the cost. So absolutely yes, we'll keep working on optimizing the cost and making sure that the processes are running efficiently and you only pay for what you essentially use. Please.
Any chance of support for Azure analysis services?
Yeah. So the question is, do we have any support for Azure analysis services? That is something that like I said, we are working to plan for the next semester. It is definitely a feedback that we have heard from a bunch of customers that they want this to be supported. So as I mentioned, we are still going through the planning exercise. So we'll see based on the prioritization of this and the other items, whether this will make the cut. But I can tell you that we keep on hearing about Azure analysis services as a source a lot, and we are looking at it to see when can we support it in the system. But I don't have a timeline to share right now. Yep.
How far will the integration with Unity Catalog go?
So, sorry, can you repeat the question?
Integration with Unity Catalog.
Okay, so the question is, how far is the integration with Unity Catalog? The integration with Unity Catalog is in private preview right now for tech metadata capture. There is work in progress to capture the lineage information as well. Databricks has already exposed us the APIs for us to capture that lineage information. Now we are doing the work to enable that. We will essentially, in a month's time or so, depending on the feedback that we get from select private preview customers on the usage of the Unity Catalog integration, we will make it public for tech metadata, and very soon lineage will follow as well. And also the classification. Classification is also something that we are working to light up for the Databricks Unity Catalog integration in the next 6 months. Okay, so the question is there any plan to integrate master data services in Purview? Now, if the question is around the master data services that exist with SQL today, the answer is no. As you would imagine, the same goes with why was SSIS not taken and integrated. We built an ADF because when these systems were built, they were not built for the distributed nature of the cloud. So taking those systems with the current model is not possible. And hence you see that for us right now, for an MDM solution, we have partner approach in terms of how you can use Prophecy Cluden to do that. We are not working to build that in-house, at least not in the next 6 months, I can tell you that for sure.
My next question was actually about Cluden for data policy management, so that's not included either.
Yes. Great. Any other question, comments? All right. Thank you so much, guys, for giving me and Blessed an opportunity to present today. I hope this was informative. If there are any other questions, feel free to reach out through the resources that we have provided. Otherwise, thank you so much, and have a great weekend ahead.